Okay, let's get going. Anybody have updates to share on?
I haven't improved my score from before, but I've just been working through trying to improve sort of model behavior by, like there's a discussion about sort of trying to get the most performance out of sort of the DiBerta base model. So I've just been sort of trying to implement what they were talking about, like using layer-wise learning rates and using reinitialization of the weights of the top layers. So I've just been putting those in. It does seem to be helping. So once I've got that, I was going to like retrain all of the models and then try and retrain that entire DiBerta family and use that again with the SVR thing to hopefully get an improvement from that. But
is there a kind of post or discussion post that you're talking about over this thing you looked at already?
There's a discussion post. Well, there's actually a couple of discussion posts on it. Okay. Yeah, I think we looked at it a wee bit last week. Yeah, there's like people sort of just like saying about trying to get their model to like a 0.43.
Mm-hmm. Just a single model or ensemble?
Just a single model. Let's see. I'll just share my screen a sec. Yeah, so there's two discussion posts. This is one of them. So you can see here, so like this is using like, so he reached 0.43 with DiBerta base by like using, like layer-wise learning rate and reinitialization. So I've tried to stick that in as well. And then there was like another discussion post. I can never find the ones I'm after. That's the one we just looked at. There is another one. Oh, here it is here. This one's single DiBerta base. So this one here is similar. So like this guy here again, he was talking about, so like he says he got there with the DiBerta base using like these techniques. So yeah, so I've implemented this and it does give me a slight improvement. I tried in the weights initialization thing within the model that inherits from that implements the transformer, the DiBerta. It has like a weight initialization, but like I think it just initializes the weights to normal weights. So I tried, like he says he's tried a few. So like I think I just tried this chiming one, but my scores actually got a bit worse. But I've only looked at that briefly. I'm not exactly sure if I was doing it right either, but yeah, like so certainly.
When you change the layer wise, like what is there a default that Hugging Face or DiBerta uses, and how are you changing it?
I'll see if I can find the notebook it was on. Yeah, I think it's this one. Yeah, so like this is just the standard custom model from sort of the public notebook. Yeah, so like here, so it's like making like the Hugging Face model here, and then it makes just like a single linear layer here, and then it calls like this custom models init weights function, but it only gives it the linear layer from the top. So I presume it just comes in here and then it does like this.
Right, normal initialization. Yeah.
Yeah, so I tried getting rid of this line, the init weights, and changed it to that. But I'm not sure if that's the right way to set up the chiming normal weights on the fully connected. I think it is, but yeah, so as I say, I just tried it and it seemed to make things worse. But the guy, he said that he found better results with one of the other versions. But Yes.
Right. No, I was asking, so when you do the layer-wise weighting, is that the code below, like reinitializing, and do you do it just for the last, or do you do it for all of the, the layer-wise weight?
Oh yeah. So
Learning rate.
yeah. So like this bit here is reinitializing the weights of the top of the transformer. So at the minute I've tried doing it with one layer and 2 layers, and yeah, like so far it has shown an improvement for me. So it just, again, it calls like this init weight function here. Yeah, so it just reinitializes the top of the transformer. So that seemed to help. But then I also yeah, like in the normal code, there's like this get optimizer parameters thing. So I've changed that a bit. Yeah, so within here, it yeah, depending on what layer it is, it changes the learning rate per layer. So like as you go down the transformer, it uses progressively less learning rate. Yeah, there's like this multiplication factor. So like each layer gets progressively less, and so I got slightly better scores with this as well. So yeah, so both of those things appear to help a bit, but they are sort of giving like fractional improvements on the standard model. So I haven't managed to get any sort of major jump ahead on it. And as I say, at the minute I'm just working on one fold and just looking at the cohesion scores rather than the whole scores. So if I can get things to like look a bit better, then I was going to train the whole model and train for all the folds. So that's where I'm up to at the minute.
Interesting. Yeah, I was, for me, there's an interesting, you had mentioned, Steve, last time that you'd seen the problem, or one of the, so stating the problem, I'm seeing this, not the timeout, but notebook through exception error.
Yeah.
So I was trying to, and I'm, still basically combining or ensembling the Liberta ensemble with the SVR and with a couple of other notebooks. And it keeps, when I run just the Liberta family ensemble, that works. When I run SVR by itself, that works. When I combine SVR with a bunch of other pre-trained models and ensemble them, that works. But as soon as I combine the Liberta family with SVR or Liberta family with any of the other models, then I see the through exception error. So based on what you had mentioned last time, I checked, I think you were talking about a problem in the notebooks using the split, right?
Oh yeah.
Stratified splitting. But then see, because I don't retrain the family of models that he is, I just kind of use what he is already trained. So I find that I'm only using the stratified or the splitting of the data. I'm only using the in SVR. That's so I have only, short way of saying it is I have only one split code that I'm importing. I don't even have multiple of them, right? Because I am bringing in the pre-trained models from the debugger family of models. So I don't retrain them. I just use the train models on the data, on the test data. But what is strange is, and this is the part that I find really interesting or annoying or both, is when I run the model, the ensemble of ensembles, so to speak, right? Like one is already an ensemble and then I combine SVR and stuff. Then I find that I'm able to run to completion, and I submitted, I kind of, submit the notebook through a commit and run, and it runs successfully. It comes back and tells me that it ran successfully and generates the submission file. When I submit the submission file, then it throws the through notebook through an exception error. So it's really weird because it runs successfully with the 3 test cases that they have given in the test, but it seems like something in the something in the test that data that I don't see is causing an error with the ensemble.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like when I run normally everything and I run it interactively, it generates the submission file. I submit the submission file and it throws an exception error. And
Yeah,
I don't see that error when I run it interactively and when I run just the ensemble of debugger models by itself, it runs successfully as well.
Yeah, like obviously when you say you submit the submission file, it's not really submitting the submission file, it is running the notebook again, but yeah, like
right.
with the full test set. So like obviously you go from having 3 rows of data into having 3,000 rows of data.
Right.
Yeah, so like when I get that type of problem, what I tend to do is I swap the test and the training data over and try running it with the training data, pretending that the current training data is the test data. So as you're running with sort of data sets that are a similar size to what the actual test set will be. Obviously the results you get are rubbish, but it just sort of stress tests your code.
Okay. So what you're saying is instead of running inference on the test data, run inference on the training data to see, because the size of the data at least matters and it's more varied than the 3 samples. So does that work and try to debug, because at least you have all of the data in front of you?
Yeah, so just load the training CSV into your test data frame and run with that.
Okay. I think
that normally tends to show up the problems.
Yeah, that because I was really struggling. Now, one thing I tried and I wanted to share this and see whether any of you have seen it, and I tried to fix it, but that was not the problem. So can you folks see my screen? Let me know when you can.
Yeah, I can see it, yeah.
Okay, so you see this message that I'm highlighting.
Yes.
Do you, because it throws so many, all this semaphore lock release too many times messages for every one of the 10 folds, it's kind of hard, but do you folks see this error?
I've never seen the token indices one, but the error above there, you can get rid of that. That there's caused by your data set is using number of workers equal to 4. And it throws that error because of the fact there's only 3 entries in the test set, which is less than the number of workers. So what I have in my code, I have if the length of the test set equals 3, then set the number of workers to 1. But I haven't really noticed much difference in the time it takes to run the code between 1 worker and 4 workers. So you might be easier just set down to 1 worker.
Say number of workers is 1. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
But what is really strange is I see this error for the cases where the model is, of all the ensembles. If I go on, there are 10 of them, right? That he ensembles, and of the 10, this happens for models 3, 6, and 7, and all of them are the Deberta V2X large model. See, this is Deberta X large MNLI, then this is Deberta V2X large, and the third model is also Deberta V2X large. So for all these X large models, I haven't changed a single thing other than, just copied it and I wanted to run it. So I just changed the label and I reran it. And when I rerun it, then rerun meaning, his notebook with no edits, I see this error pop up. So I was going to ask, have you folks seen this? And then, so I thought maybe that's causing the problem. So what I did was I removed the 3 ensembles or the 3 models from this ensemble that were causing this error. And I submitted the run. What I do find is the score drops. I mean, it's still 0.43, but using the technique you had shown of checking the public score, it's less than when I include these models in the ensemble. So I was going to ask you, or Mayank, you had submitted too. Have you seen this error, or did you encounter this when you ran it?
No, sorry, I didn't encounter any of these errors before.
So you haven't seen it, or you haven't noticed it, or it just didn't show up for you?
It didn't show up for me, so I was unable to deal with it.
Okay, so it did not at all. I mean, you ran it and it ran without errors?
Yes.
Huh. That's interesting, because I didn't change anything and it's showing me these. Are you using the 928 updated version, or is it like an earlier version of the guy's notebook?
It's the 928 updated version.
Interesting. So I wonder why, just in my case, this errors are showing up. That's really
maybe
weird.
Steve
Because
might have faced it.
I haven't seen those errors, but I did run that notebook, but maybe I didn't look. So it's just a warning it's given you, isn't it? So it would go through.
Yeah. It runs successfully to completion, which is the weird thing. And when I run just this notebook and it runs successfully and I submit it, meaning, on the test set, I run it on the test set and that completes too. So in a sense, that doesn't seem to be, yeah. So this thing where it says token indices sequence length is longer than the maximum sequence length for this model, and running this sequence through the model will result in indexing errors.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm not sure I want indexing errors. I don't understand quite what the error message is, but it runs to completion successfully. So I was just wondering whether any of you have seen it, and obviously, from my experiment, it shows that that's likely not the reason my notebook is throwing an exception. But I just wanted to eliminate that, although I noticed that I'm losing a few points by excluding those 3 models. So I guess to your point, I'll go back to changing it to, or I'll go back and make the change of number of workers is 1 and see whether, but that should not cause this problem to go away if I understand things correctly. So I'm still puzzled why I'm the only guy who is seeing this error. And Mike isn't seeing it, and neither are you. And I'm not changing anything in his notebook, and I'm just resubmitting his notebook, and I see this message.
Yeah, like
It's
I might
really
have
weird.
it. I haven't sort of looked at it closely or whatever. I think I just ran it. I didn't, and yeah, like it may well have been lost in amongst those other warnings that come out from the non-worker things.
Yeah, because it's 10-fold and it runs like 10 models, so it's like there's so many errors. I dove into it primarily because I was like, why is this ensemble causing me all these problems? And that's when I found this error message, and I wanted to kind of eliminate it. But I'll try what you suggested next, which is submit it, not submit, but kind of try the models with the training set and see whether that gives me any leads of why problems are being, because I invariably I see this constantly.
Yeah. And you say that your ensemble goes okay if you don't have the family of Deberta in there?
Yeah, because this one.
Yeah, so could you maybe try in the Deberta family notebook, it's got what, 10 different variations of Deberta. Could you just chop it down and just use the first one?
Yeah,
like
that may be another thing.
gradually
I tried it with that's why I was trying, I fixed the errors that I showed you and tried it with 7, and that still throws the exception. So I can do what you're suggesting, and instead of it being 7, reduce it to 1.
Yeah, I think I would start at 1 and
whether,
see, because like that would sort of make sure that the code itself is okay, as opposed to it could be because of the fact there's like so many going in there, it's causing a problem. But I'll start with 1 and see what happens.
Yeah, that's another good suggestion. So I'll try with 2 things you said. Try with the training set and try with the 1 in the ensemble. And, as I said, the other thing which is, gives me see all these notebook through exceptions is with my ensemble having 5 inputs, so to speak, and one of them is the ensemble already. But when I do up to 4, which is I do SVR plus 3 others, and I don't use the ensemble of 10, then it runs. Obviously, I get a low score, but it runs. Now, as soon as I begin to include the Deberta base ensemble with any of these, then it starts failing. And when I run just the Deberta family inference, then it runs okay, whether with 10 or with 7. That's the difference between, you see this updated and then I fix the updated one, and both of these are 0.43, but using your technique, Steve, that you had shared, I find that the 10 ensemble one is actually a little better on the public score than, well, I don't know how much better, but it's better compared to the 7 ensemble versus the 10 ensemble.
And the
So
other
the
thing you
3 MNLI X large models do seem to make a difference in the ensemble.
Yeah, like the other thing you could try is if your Deberta family one works okay by itself, you could try just having it in the ensemble and not having anything else, just to make sure that the ensemble code's pulling it in right. So like effectively you wouldn't have an ensemble, you just have an ensemble of one thing, which would be the Deberta family. Your ensemble notebook, is it just that guy's ensemble technique where he just like runs the
No.
Jupyter notebooks? How are you doing the ensemble?
Yeah, no, see, what I do is I use different guys. Let me show you that. I can just go here. Okay, so here, I'm ensembling 5 different things, including
Yes.
the ensemble of ensembles. So I use what this guy does, which is, create a new directory, and then delete, do the first thing, and then kind of completely blow away everything, and
All right,
save
so
just the results of the thing in the directory and keep building that up, and then eventually ensemble all the submission things. In fact, I think you had found a notebook which does this. Right. So here's my ensemble code.
yeah, so I use a different technique to this. There's a public notebook of ensembles, and he uses a different method where he runs the Jupyter notebooks externally. The way that you're doing the ensemble here, like that's how I used to do it, where you would like cut and paste the code from your other notebooks into this one. But the trouble is, it's like once one thing runs, it may not clear all the memory, right? And so you can have sort of memory being used up by one model ends up sort of impacting the next one. Whereas like the other technique, it runs everything in isolation. If you go to the public notebooks a second for this competition.
So you mean like the code or discussion?
Code. And then if you sort these by best score. Yeah, so that one there, that ensemble, yeah. Yeah, if you scroll down a bit on this. You scroll down a wee bit more onto number 3, doesn't bring. Yeah, so here, so this here is like, you can see what he's doing. He runs the that baseline Deberta notebook, but you're running it externally. So it's not actually, you don't have any of the code of each notebook in here. It runs it all sort of separately. And then each one writes a submission file just as yours is doing, and then combines them at the end. But the difference is, yeah, you don't have to cut and paste your code in. And it means as well that everything is like separated from each other one. And so like there's no like interference.
This case, but I still need to bring in those nodes. What do I have to import to do this?
So
I still import the just. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so for example, yeah, so like this one here that this is referencing, the FB3 Deberta V3 base, that there's the sort of the common public notebook that's used by everybody. And so what you do is you create a data set, and then so you would go to that Jupyter notebook, and yeah, you click on the 3 dots at the top right, and you like download it.
This one.
Yeah, so you click on that site. Yeah. Yeah, so here you would click on download code, which would save you the IPYNB file, and then you put it into your own data set. So he's created a data set here called feedback notebooks. And so for each thing that he wants to ensemble, he adds the Python Jupyter notebook into his feedback notebooks data set. And then, yeah, this just runs it then. So like it just runs the code externally. So he hasn't had to copy the.
I see. So just so I'm clear, what you're saying is you find out this particular where the notebook is for each of your things that you want to run, and you go there and download the IPNB and then create a data set and upload all the notebooks into that data set.
Yeah, it's maybe easier if I share my screen a second. I can show you how I've done it. Yeah, so like here's my copy of his thing. And yeah, so like for this one here, so as I say, this is like the main public notebook. And yeah, so like I went to it and then I added it, downloaded it, as I say, like using those 3 dot things. And then I've created this data set. So within this data set here, you can see here, it just, I've uploaded each of the Jupyter notebooks into this. So like, then I can run them from within here. So all you have to do, as I say, for each model that you want to add into your ensemble, you create the data set, download the Jupyter notebook, and then include it into your data set. And then within the, once it's in here, then you bring that data set into this project. And then you can just run them like this. And so, yeah, so like this will run the Jupyter notebook, which creates like the submission file on disk. And then at the very end, it just like reads back all of the submission files.
And do you still do the submission, create the submission directory, or do you do it differently?
Well, it's, yeah, so like for each model in your ensemble, so this here is like the base Deberta one. So this runs that notebook, which writes out its own submission file. And you can see here, it writes the submission file, and then this line converts it into submission 3. And like similarly for like the next bit, it makes submission 4. And then at the bottom of the file, it just reads all of the submission files that it's made and sticks them back together and averages over them. And yeah, like then it creates its own submission file.
Okay, yes. Got it. Yeah, that part I do as well, except that one part that you mentioned, which is difference between this way of doing it and mine is, in mine I run it in kind of inline, so to speak, whereas this, like you say, runs each of them in their own memory, just copies the file kind of in their own, each of the notebooks in its own environment, so to speak, right?
That's right. And as I say, the advantage is the fact that each thing's running separately, and so you don't get any interference between them. Whereas like, what was that?
Yeah, got it.
Yeah,
got
so
it.
like,
I tried that.
Yeah, in your case, if anything doesn't clean up the memory right, that could cause the thing to crash, which is probably what's happening for you.
Yeah, that's likely. I might even try this one first before trying all the other debugs to see whether it's interference of the memory related stuff that's causing the problem.
Exactly. Do the errors in all your notebooks are the same, or they are different with respect to the tokenizations that you were showing earlier?
No, as I mentioned, right, whenever I include the ensemble of ensembles in my ensemble, the Deberta ensembles, or I should say Deberta family, whenever I include the Deberta family, wow, that's interesting. Is somebody blowing a conch or something? Or
is a ship coming in?
Yeah, it's a train.
All right.
The train engines are blowing the horns.
Wow. So whenever I include that, as I was saying to Steve, the notebook runs successfully, generates a submission file when run on the test data set, but fails and throws an exception. Now, as to your question of when do I see the token errors, the token length errors, I see them only for 3 models when I run the family ensemble just by itself. And obviously, I think I confirm this. I also see them when I run it as part of my overall ensemble, because ultimately when I'm running the overall ensemble, I'm also running this ensemble in the same way. So I see it for 3 cases, and the 3 cases are all related to the Piperta V2 large models. There are 3 different versions of that model that he's using. One is MNLI, and the other 2, I forget what they are. But if you are using his notebook as is, then these are models, these are configuration 3, 6, and 7.
Hey, we lost you there for a minute.
That's it. Oh,
Sorry,
you're muted.
somehow it got muted. Yeah, somehow I muted myself. So Tiberta X2,
You're muted again.
I'm not touching anything and it keeps muting me. Somebody doesn't like me talking. Let's see, Tiberta V2 X large models. There are 3 versions of those in the family ensemble, and those 3 in config 3, 6, config 3, config 6, config 7 are those, and they are the ones where I noticed that particular. And again, as Steve was saying, it's only an error, and the notebook still runs to completion. My notebook, when I ensemble it, still runs to completion. It's only when I submit it, meaning when it is used with a large test set, that I begin to see the problem, because then my notebook does not score with a notebook through exception error. Not timeout error, but a notebook through exception error, which, as Steve pointed out, means that there's some kind of bug in the code, not that it is timed out.
Yeah, I was wondering this
Right,
in
and
general.
what is really
In general,
sorry.
I take it that when you stick a piece of text into a transformer, there's a maximum length of how many tokens you can have. I'm not sure what the limit is for Tiberta or whatever, but in all of these other bits of text that we're putting into the transformer, are they not getting truncated at all?
I believe they are. That's why I wanted to, the other thing which I wanted to do after I kind of fix the problem for this particular case I was struggling with, was to pursue the error that it actually gives to see what it means, because it says that the token length is greater than the token length of the model. And the other thing I was wondering is, or 2 questions arise in my mind. One is, why can't I just make many of these models come with variable token length, at least 512 and sometimes 1024. So I was wondering whether I could go change it. Obviously, one downside of changing it is then I have to retrain the models. I can't use these trained models because these models are already trained with a fixed size. But the other thing I wanted to understand is, it says there are indexing errors if I use that, right? And I was wondering, what are the indexing errors? Does it mean that because the sequence is longer, if it's supplying a sequence of things as inputs, is it getting, will it get confused between the results because it is now lost with respect to what is the index of the sequence that it is feeding in, or what does that error message mean when it says, sequencing error? So that, or indexing error are likely, or whatever the error message says. So I wanted to understand that as well, which I have not yet. But what is strange is that even with that error, A, the ensemble's complete, B, the ensemble's actually with that model included give me better results. So obviously, at least in this instance, that message seems to not have any relevance because it still gives me better performance for this task than when I exclude that model.
Yeah, I just
So it's
wondered if
all
it
a
was
bit,
chopping off the end of your tokens. I just wondered if it was like reaching the limit of its input and chopping off the end, but I don't know enough about transformers to know what it's doing.
Yeah, that's what I would think. But then if it's just chopping, then it shouldn't matter to it from an indexing standpoint, because if you're just chopping, then the index continues to the next index because you've just chopped it.
Yeah.
But it seems to say somehow that my indexing will get screwed up, which is what bothered me in the first place. That, oh, I don't want my indexing getting screwed up because then, maybe it's giving me results that don't match up with the index. And as with many error messages, the error message is not very descriptive and or is misleading because the indexing errors obviously don't seem to adversely impact the results, which is very strange.
Yeah, maybe Robota Large has this kind of a error in certain environments with respect to the hardware that it's being used in. But I suppose you are not making any changes that would affect the environment in which the hardware is being truncated, or we are using ensembles or something. Yeah.
Nothing.
With respect to
And in fact, it's strange because I've run his notebook unmodified, meaning, just copy, edit, resubmit, and, compared it to where I copied it and reran it with the no change, and they all run fine. They all give me the same results. So.
Yeah, maybe I think so. You need to browse the Stack Overflow for this type of error, and what might lead to this with respect to the follow-ups of this particular error. They might have it on Stack Overflow.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll check. And, obviously, I just started to, as you folks saw, I just started to think about using a teacher-student model, and I identified a few papers that I posted the link to. I haven't started reading them yet, but I need to read them to be able to implement them, to see what I could do to get a simplified model. But as Steve seems to point out, it seems like even without a student-teacher one, just doing the layer-wise and innate and bunch of other techniques, you can get a single DBERTA-based model to do as good. But I was wondering if I could get my ensembles to be better, which is why I was struggling with this thing. And at least in the top 50, 60, 70, something, top 100, then I can stop the tweaking and try the student teacher approach. But I haven't gotten there yet. I'm still at about 150-ish.
So are you using the P100s or the T4s that newly came out? And
I'm still sticking with whatever default runs. I'm not. Do we need to do anything specific to use the T100s or?
No, for the T4s, for the two types, yeah, we need to go through a drop-down menu and select the 2 into T4s that is required.
And do they reduce the hours then by that?
No, it's the same.
Oh, okay. So you still get 40 hours, except you would be using better CPU. So you would kind of save up on how much computing you can do because you're using faster GPUs. Is that it?
Yep. So yeah, it's with respect to the P100s are the single ones, and the two T4s are the dual ones.
But do you know off the top of your head, when you run the T4s duals, does the job get split automatically, or do you have to do something? Because it's not.
No, we need to write custom multi GPU code to use them properly.
Okay. Because that's what I was wondering. There's nothing that would automatically split your jobs to 2 GPUs if you're using, even if you have them, right? So
yeah,
what you're saying is you can use the drop-down, but then you will need to modify the code to, I mean, if you're doing ensembles, that may not be that difficult, right? Because it's a matter of running, like if you're ensembling 10 things, you could potentially run just simply one thing on one and another on the other. But I don't know what the code is for pinning a job on a particular GPU and stuff like that. We would need to learn those things, don't we?
Yeah, for effectively splitting up the jobs such that both the GPUs get utilized in a sufficient way, in an effective way.
Effective. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I haven't seen is there any kind of an example notebook or things that they posted which tells you how to go about doing those type of things?
No, they haven't posted it, but one Hugging Face employee Zachary, he has posted a notebook in which he has used Accelerate framework of the Hugging Face, and he has used it to do the distributed training in the Keras multi GPU using Accelerate. Yeah,
I see.
He's done it using Keras?
Oh no, sorry. He has done it using Accelerate.
Right.
I will just try to post the link in the chat.
Can you post it to Slack?
Yeah,
so we don't lose it.
It's in PyTorch. Yeah.
Yeah, the fact that you have to write some special code to get it to work, that'll explain things. Yeah, during the week I tried swapping over to using the 2 GPU setup, and it didn't make any difference to my my time, but I hadn't done anything to my code, so I just went back to the normal.
Okay, anybody else have any other thoughts or inputs? If not, okay, thanks everybody for joining. And we'll see you all in a week, hopefully inch a little bit further beyond 0.43. Although I haven't seen anybody do that yet. Have you, Steve? I haven't kept track of the leaderboard completely yet.
No, no one has crossed that threshold yet.
No, it's impossible to get to 4.2.
Yeah.
Yeah, like everybody is jammed up against the point. It's almost like a, physical and mental and block of some kind.
Yeah.
They should take special considerations now, given that it has been around 3-4 weeks.
Yeah.
And people haven't climbed to the 0.42. So they should open up a third and a fourth decimal place or do something with respect to this.
Yeah, that's what many people had requested anyway, right? And they just didn't flinch. The request was made by, I forget that guy. Multiple people had made that request quite some time back, but wasn't, for some reason, didn't quite stick with him. Okay, thanks for joining, everyone. See you all in a week, and let's hope we are able to make progress on each of our issues. Good luck.
Okay, cheers. See you next week. Bye.
Thanks. See you all.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys. See you next week. Happy Diwali to all those who follow.
Thank you. Same to you.